Hi there, and welcome to Be a Global Citizen, the podcast that explores the concept of global citizenship through the lens of value-creating education. My name is Scott Bauer, and I'm a SOCA researcher and educator. I hope you find the discussions, stories, and insights on this podcast to be valuable and inspiring as we strive to become global citizens who are committed to living a contributive life. Enjoy the conversation.
Hi, my name is Lydia Musliu, and I've grown up and lived most of my life from Mitrovica, Kosovo, and I am the elementary principal at Kosovo Leadership Academy.
Hi, Lydia. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Very happy to have a principal on the podcast, such leadership and responsibility. And you're also part of the amazing cohort in master's program through Harvard. And it's just been such a wonderful journey that we're both sharing in. And it's actually coming to an end very soon. So I think this is a perfect time to think back on what got us to this point, and also just kind of like what led you to want to do this work in the first place. So I'm very excited to see how you share out your story and how we make connections with global citizenship. You're so far away. You're in Kosovo, and I'm in California over here in the U.S., and yet we're able to still connect and inspire. So this is precious space that we're holding, and I appreciate you making the time. So I wanted to pass it over to you and ask about what brought you to the world of education? What led you to this path as a elementary school principal, elementary school and middle school? Did I pick that up right?
No, just elementary.
That's enough. Yeah, that's plenty. Yeah. So what led you to the work? And you can start wherever in the timeline. So
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. I've listened to a lot of your other podcasts, and it's exciting to be here. So my story, I feel like, kind of starts before I was born. When my mom was 5 months pregnant with me, and after just 11 months of marriage, my father passed away. And so that really kind of put my life on a different path. And my mom was an educator, and she is an educator, and she's passionate about educating kids. And so I've kind of lived my childhood in many different places. Starting in when I was 4 years old, I had kindergarten in Peru, where my mom taught me and another young girl there kindergarten. And then when I was 8, we moved to Albania, where my mom taught a group of kids from an orphanage, from a local orphanage. And I was able to kind of help out with those classes. And we spent 2 years in Albania when someone had approached my mom about starting an educational center in Kosovo for the kids who had just recently lost parents and loved ones in the war that happened in 1998, 1999. And so we moved to Kosovo in 2001, where my mom started an educational center called the House of Laughter. And it was the purpose of this center was basically to bring laughter back to these kids who had lost everything. They had lost their parents, they had lost their home, and it was just to bring joy into their lives. And as an educator, we had my mom had English classes and some math, and they speak Albanian in Kosovo, and so Albanian classes to help kids along their educational path. And it was actually here, I was only in 7th grade when I started teaching my first class regularly. I taught English to 3rd graders as a 7th grader. And it was around that time that I realized that I wanted to be a teacher, and that's what I wanted to do with my life. And so fast forward many years, well, actually, rewind again. It was at the House of Laughter, the very first day that we opened, that I actually met my husband. His father had been killed in the war, and he came to the House of Laughter to learn English because he believed that learning English was the path to a better future. Education was a path to a better future, was that hope for him and for many of the kids who were in Kosovo during that time. And so fast forward now several years, and my husband and I both were able to return to America, where we got our education. And while we were in America, my mom decided that it was time for her to close the House of Laughter and begin working towards an actual school, because the needs of Kosovo had changed, and it's a developing country, and she realized that we needed a structured private school in our city of Mitrovica. Kosovo, the public education system in Kosovo is very weak. It has actually scored in the bottom three countries of the last two PISA tests that have come out, and the people are hungry for an education. And so while we were in the States, I majored in secondary English education, and my husband majored in business administration. And we both even chose our majors based on how we could help with the school that we wanted to start in Kosovo. And when we returned to Kosovo in 2015, we the process obviously, and the planning, the preparation happened, several years before that. But in September of 2015, the doors to the school opened, and the school is called Kosovo Leadership Academy, because we want to raise up the future leaders and educate the future leaders of Kosovo. And so I also had my daughter in 2014. So when we moved to Kosovo, we had a 1-year-old, and then I shortly became pregnant again. And so I was very busy being mom for the first several years, but I helped out wherever I could. I went in once a week to do the library. We had a donation of about 3,000 books, and during the summer, I would bring my little one in, and we would work together to set up the library. Then during the year, I would go in once a week and help check out books to kids. I planned and ran activities like fall festivals and things like that. And then after my second son was born, so several years later, when my second son was about 6 months old, then I began teaching at the school, and I was the high school English teacher. And so I started teaching in 2018, and I taught high school English for about 4 years. And being a smaller school, there are always needs in a lot of different areas. And so the way that the school grew was we started as a 6th through 9th grade school, and then we added on to every year. So our 9th grade, when they moved to 10th grade, obviously we grew with them. And so after we had our very first graduating class, that next year we went back and we started our kindergarten. And so then we started growing our elementary. Well, when we were in about our third year of elementary, we needed some more English teachers in elementary. And so I was the 10th through 12th grade English teacher, and then I was pulled down to the first grade. And so I taught first grade and then 10th through 12th grade English for 1 year, and then realized I needed to take a little bit more off my plate. And but I kind of focused a little bit more on elementary. So I gave up one high school class, and then I had more classes for first grade. And then the year after that, I not completely, I still didn't want to give up my seniors, because I had my 10th graders, I had them for 2 years, and I did not want to give them up for their senior year. But then I was teaching 2 elementary classes, and I was finishing up my seniors year, and then I moved completely to elementary. And by that time, when I moved completely to elementary, it was obvious that our school needed an elementary principal, because we had, again, the way we were growing, we had one general school director, but now that we were growing, we kind of needed to separate the different areas of leadership. And so my first year of Harvard, I was actually the assistant principal. And then this past year has been, the board asked me to become the the elementary principal. And it's been very exciting. I never really expected that I would be in leadership, but I think after several years of teaching and just being in the school in a lot of different aspects, from activities coordinator to librarian to I taught preschool also in there for a little bit. And I just saw where there were needs for different types of leadership. And so I began applying for programs, and I applied for Harvard, not ever expecting, honestly, to get in. But here we are today.
Wow, I what a journey, and it's just so evident that like your passion for teaching, all learners, and how that's tied in with the country, right? That you love so much, Kosovo, really wanting to give back. It's you've been on this mission for decades, at this point, building out a model in the form of a private school that would really help jumpstart, right, change, education change within the wider ecosystem, right, so that more and more of the young people there have access to really quality education and just hope in general. I mean, it sounds like almost like predestined, like ever since you were like in the womb, right? Your mom, who is this, sounds like she's a badass teacher, going from country to country, was, really wanting to go where like there was the most need, it sounds like. And so I just kind of wanted to maybe ask a little bit more about your mom, since it sounds like she was such a major influence in your life, and actually brought you to these different countries and got you involved in like education, right? Being a teacher. You mentioned like you lived in Peru and then Albania. Like that's so cool. I didn't know that, because I used to live in Peru briefly. I was not 4 though. I was a little bit older. But yeah, do you have any memories of kind of what was it like? Kind of moving from one place to the next. Did you feel like, I don't know, like it can be very jarring, but I mean, with your mom, and like how did you kind of navigate that at such a young age, like some of those major transitions?
Yeah, so in terms of memories in Peru, I'm not sure if I have memories or if I just see a picture and think, oh, yeah, I like, creating my own memories. There is one that like I remember because we lived in Iquitos, Peru, which is like in the Amazon jungle, and so we would go and visit an orphanage, and we would like travel by boat and everything, and on the weekends, and so I would swim in the river, in the Amazon River, and I thought. I thought I had this memory of seeing crocodiles on the other side of the river, and my mom was like, "That never happened." And I was like, "Oh, I'm pretty sure it did." So who knows? Maybe it was just logs or something over there. I don't know. But no, it was for me, honestly, like I never like I felt different when I would go to the States then and would, be with a group of people my age in the States, because then it's like, oh, that's not normal. Like it's not normal to go to these places and to do these things and stuff. But I pretty much always there was a brief time when we were in Albania that I was kind of resentful of being taken out of the US, because I had lived in the US for 3 years between Peru and Albania. And so I had gone to a school there, and I had made friends and stuff. And so I was a little bit resentful of her taking me out of that. But her solution was, we had a friend who was visiting the States, and she sent me with that friend to go to the States for a month. And I hated it. I hated being away from her. I was 8. And so I hated being away from her. And then when I came back, I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm not going to complain anymore. And really when we moved to Kosovo, I found my place. And this is home for sure. I feel much more at home, much more comfortable here than in the States or any other place in the world. And I think it really comes down to, I know a lot of like third culture kids who, can't wait to get back to the States, or can't wait to get out of, whatever their parents put them in. But I think it has a lot to do with just your own perspective of what are you going to choose to take out of it. And uh, and if you choose to be, bitter and resentful and think of the things that you missed, and the possibilities you could have had, then yeah, it's not going to be you're not going to get a lot out of it. But if you choose to see what you do have that a lot of people don't, and you get to see the world, and you get to really understand things that people who, live in the States all their lives, and, a small bubble, really don't understand, then you're going to be walking out of that experience much different.
Yeah, no, I appreciate, the way you shared it, and, I could tell, like, you're being very honest about it, right? Not looking back in like rose tinted like glasses, right? But saying that, like, there was this feeling of discomfort, right? And a little bit of that resentment at certain points of like, why does it have to be like this, right? Feeling like kind of getting pulled along, because of, the decisions that your mom made. And of course, your mom making those decisions with the best of intentions, in terms of her own sense of like wanting to contribute as an educator, but also of like kind of showing you as like a young person, like this is what it means to like live like a fulfilling life, and then these kind of opportunities to go between cultures, live in different countries, will make sense later. And so it brought you to Kosovo, right? Where this incredible like initiative was launched, the House of Laughter. I love that name, by the way. And I'm just curious though, because was like why was it just like, oh, someone like a friend of your mom was just like, we need like help in Kosovo, or was there like a deeper connection? Like, do you have ancestry there, or was it just like, no, this was the
Yeah,
calling, and then you guys went?
I would love to have ancestry here. I would love to have some Albanian blood in me, because I feel like I deserve it. I feel so much more Albanian than I do American. And who knows? I have never taken one of those DNA tests. Who knows? Maybe we have something, someone from around here. But
Maybe.
no, it was legitimately, it was a man who would come and help at the orphanage. Sometimes he was a German man. He would come and help at the orphanage sometimes, and he would go back and forth from Kosovo to Albania, helping with relief and refugees. At that time, when we moved to Albania, the last refugee camp within the city that we were in had just shut down. And so they were, thousands of displaced Kosovars were in Albania, because they weren't, it wasn't safe, to be in their homes. But we it was interesting because he had mentioned it to my mom, and she just kind of was like, no, we enjoy Albania. We are happy doing what we're doing right now. We don't need to go anywhere. And then he kind of was a little bit more insistent. And so my mom was like, okay, fine, we'll come and visit and we'll see. And then just to kind of like appease him, right? And not, I don't think she was really seriously considering it. But we came, and it was probably the worst trip of my life. It was so cold. Here was probably one of the coldest winters, and we stayed in a place where it was like there was no central heat. They just had a wood stove, and then that, once the wood goes out at night, there's no heat in your room. Also, I got really bad food poisoning, and it was not a pleasant experience. And but when we left, my mom felt like we needed to come here, and for my mom and myself, like, our faith is a big part of what we do. And my mom really felt like God was calling her to Kosovo and to help the people here.
Yeah, no, I mean, there was no question in my mind, like, in order to like make such a courageous decision like that, the element of faith had to, be a part of it. And I think that, like actually seeing with your own eyes, right, the circumstances, but then meeting the people and really understanding like, I can help, right? There's something I can do here. making that decision and then seeing like and not knowing where that's all going to lead. I think it's like such a crucial moment in both of your lives, right? To make that decision, right? So yeah, so the House of Laughter, right? It's kind of the name. I think is very fitting for young people, right? To because I think childhood should be a time for them to like learn, get curious about the world, and enjoy. But then you have these terrible circumstances where society is fractured, war, it could be war torn, it could be plagued with so many other different kind of issues. And in this instance, right, you were trying to kind of heal those young people's like kind of traumas, but also educate them and instill this sense of hope. Um, I'm just the House of Laughter. Did who came up with that name? I'm just curious.
So it was actually my mom came up with the name, and it's it's from a verse in the Bible actually. Let me just pull that up really fast. It's Psalm 126:2, where it says, "Our mouths were filled with laughter and our tongues with songs of joy. And it was said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them." And so that was just kind of the idea of, just that hope and that joy that we want, to bring to their lives. And so that was my mom's idea.
No, that's great. No, I appreciate you sharing that. And again, the faith piece of it. And you said that when you moved there, um, eventually they kind of set you up, as like, you were teaching like younger years, like elementary school. Um, could you maybe like take us back to that period where you just like had your full class and what was kind of going through your head? Like, were you thinking like, hey, shouldn't I be like just the student? Like, why am I suddenly now the teacher? Or because of your mom's influence, was it just so ingrained within you, like it just felt natural and like, yeah, because normally there's that dichotomy, right, of like teacher, student, but now suddenly you were like teacher and student. Like, how did you hold those things together? And what was your understanding of learning at that moment as like a seventh grader?
To be honest with you, I don't remember fully, what I was feeling back then, but I don't ever like really remember being nervous or not knowing what to do. Um, I I really think that it kind of felt natural, and one aspect of it was the fact that I was American. It immediately gave me the respect of my class, and so I was 4 years older than them, but also that the American part of it, I think, just it gave me a legitimacy, I guess, in their eyes, and I never felt like, what am I doing here? Like I don't belong here. Um, Kosovars in general have an incredible respect for Americans. I think you will be hard pressed to find any country in the world that loves America the way that Kosovo loves America. And it was because of their involvement in ending the war, and how Bill Clinton had signed the whatever he needed to sign for NATO to go in and basically stop what was happening. And so you go any place here and you say you're American, you are going to be open with welcome arms. You're going to be, if it's a home, you're going to be, taken into the living room, served tea, served, whatever they have to give you, they're going to give you with joyful hearts, because they are still, even 20 plus years later after the war, they are incredibly grateful to America and to Americans. And so I think that really helped with that um, aspect with both my mom and myself, going into the country and just being very accepted.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I when I was working in Brazil, there was a similar kind of like awe factor of like, wow, international teacher from the U.S. And there's so many kind of yeah, like preconceived notions, right? They watch like Hollywood movies, they love Friends, the TV show, and then they think, wow, like there's something special, right? And I think that to a certain extent, like, we can benefit from that, and it helps with that legitimacy piece. I also know that, like, as I continued working, years passed, my students really got to know me. That wow factor quickly faded, and they were just like, it's just Scott, like he's just a normal dude and trying to make his way in this country. And so then, like, the respect, in terms of like how you bring out like the best in your students and how you show up and really model that kind of behavior. And like teaching, there's just so much nuance to it, and it can, to be honest, be quite overwhelming, right? And to see someone do it well and to sustain that career over many, many, many years, I think is quite admirable, especially as you're kind of like aligning towards like this, larger mission that seems to be much more than just a private school, right? But like all of education in Kosovo. So that's really inspiring. But I know that, like, to get to that big change, it starts at the individual level. So I'm curious, as a teacher, and being surrounded by other leaders, and then even thinking back to your mom, what is it about, like, the teachers that have been most impactful in your life that, you like, what quality of them do you think is really essential, or that like really moved you to kind of continue doing what you're doing, or to learn in a different way, and that quality can be shared amongst all the great teachers that you've had, or it can be something very personal and tied to a specific individual. I'm just curious.
My personal education journey is very interesting because with all of the travel and everything, I've pretty much been homeschooled for a lot of time. And so my mom was the greatest educational influence in my life for sure. And the thing that stands out most to me when I think of her is her creativity. She's one of the most creative people that I know. You can give her, you know, 5 minutes and give her a random science or math topic, and she will, come up with something that is incredibly engaging. She'll probably come up with some kind of song that, will help you memorize whatever you need to memorize. And just that, like, she just has a creative mind that I've never seen the likes of in anywhere else. And so definitely creativity is huge. I think one thing that I really missed being homeschooled a lot was just having like a personal connection and a personal relationship with teachers. Thinking specifically like about for example, my senior year, um, I I had an online program, but this was a long time ago, and so online programs were not the same as they were, or as they are now. And I remember, like, I would submit assignments and I would get comments back saying, good, change this, fix this, whatever. And it was just so generic. And I just remember that year specifically just really wishing that I had somebody that would just, come alongside me and encourage me and know me, and help me not just in my studies, but just in life in general. And so I think that is something that I really strive to become for the students that I have, because I felt like I kind of missed that opportunity specifically, with my when I as I was got older in my high school years.
Yeah, thank you so much. That really that resonates, I think, with me, and I think with a lot of people, in terms of education being more than just the content of like how to get better and how to, yeah, to do better on a test. But you said, right, someone to encourage you, someone to really like know you. And especially when you're at that age, right, adolescence, teenager, you're trying to figure out a lot of things. You're like, I don't know who I am. And so to have someone kind of more anchored in their own sense of identity, and to be able to like see them like, very clearly in like for who they are, I think is part of the job of a really good teacher. Yeah, and then the creativity piece, yes, I totally get that, right? It's like that spark that really gets someone motivated, right, to just latch on to whatever the topic is, and to get excited about learning. I think if it comes from the teacher, it makes it so much more joyful. And so I think, yeah, that's an incredible quality to have. And so, the progression, right, from House of Laughter to now the start of this new private school, the Kosovo Leadership Academy, right? Yeah, it's still relatively new, right? I mean, it's you said 2013, but I'm sure with like all the different things going on, like I think you mentioned like earlier in another conversation that like the 10-year mark, or like there's like a celebration, of like 10 years. It's very exciting, and congratulations first off. But yeah, I wanted to ask about like the decision of like having it be called a leadership academy, because I feel like there's so much intentionality that comes into like what you want to name a school, and then also what the mission of that school is, right? Those are kind of like the North Stars. And so you explained about the House of Laughter and why it was called that in the context of it. So now thinking about what was happening in like, kind of like the 2010s, and then the decision to call it the Leadership Academy. Could you maybe share a little bit more about that? And then like, what do you like when thinking about leadership? Does that potentially tie into this notion of like global citizenship? I wonder if maybe we can make a connection point with that as well.
Yeah. So Kosovo became a country in 2008. And so it is the youngest country in Europe and second youngest in the world now, with South Sudan being younger. But it is also the youngest country in Europe in terms of population. We have a very, very young population within Kosovo. And we're a new country, and we need leadership. We need people who are going to be the future of this country, who are going to lead the people out of the the state that it's in. Right now, Kosovo is kind of in a crisis in terms of you're very hard pressed to find a Kosovar who is very happy to stay in Kosovo. Many people want to leave. They cannot wait to go to another place in Europe, or they cannot wait to go to America, because they think that they're going to have a better life in in either in Europe or America, because they don't see a future in Kosovo. They don't see a future with the medical system here. They don't see a future with the political system, with the judicial system, with the educational system. They, there's corruption, and they think that it'll be better for them to just go and go to a well established country and just kind of live their lives there. And we really want to fight against that, because we don't want people to be going to try to find a better life somewhere. We want people to stay and make better lives here and make the country a wonderful place to be. Kosovo is an incredible country, and it sometimes, honestly, it breaks my heart for the people here to not see what a gift it is to be here. And I understand that it is difficult in several different aspects, and but that's why we're here. That's why we are investing in the young people to hopefully have them stay. And in the classes that I teach, and in all of my interactions with people, I try to communicate that it's like, we are not trying to educate you for you to leave the country. Like, we are not doing that. We don't want to teach you to learn English so that you can go live in England or go live in America. We want to teach you to learn English so that you are, well educated, and you can stay here, and you can, be an international relations person, or, something, or or have a job online, but be here, and we want to open the world of possibilities to them, but it can be in their country. And so a part of our mission statement is that we are raising leaders to learn, live, and lead with excellence. And so it's actually kind of like a chant that we say a lot. It's like learn with excellence, live with excellence, lead with excellence, and sometimes we add love with excellence. And then and we have the kids kind of say that sometimes. And it's also our call to where for our elementary, when we want them to be quiet, the teacher says learn it, and then the kids repeat live it, and then they're supposed to be quiet. Sometimes it doesn't happen, but and so like we really try to kind of include that in even like the everyday little things that we do. But it just leadership is not something that somebody does who's way over there. Leadership is what every single person should be doing within their own circle, and it's influence and how you can influence the people who are around you. And I think one of the greatest gifts that I've been given in the principal role has been able to work with the teachers that I have. And I have to give a shout out to them. I work with the most incredible group of teachers I think that exists personally. I it is incredible to me the challenge that they face when they come to teach at our school. And we have a group of 15 teachers within the elementary, and they are absolute rock stars. They are Kosovo teachers, and all of them except for two are Kosovo teachers. They've come from the broken public education system themselves. The university does not teach teaching in the way that we expect teachers to teach at the Kosovo Leadership Academy, and they come in not knowing our system at all, not knowing the curriculum. They come in having to teach a lot of what we are teaching in English, so in a second language, and and I have just been so privileged to be able to work with them, and they're doing a fantastic job at it, and I applaud them because it is not easy. They're coming in from something completely foreign, and they have embraced the culture of Kosovo Leadership Academy, and they they're all in, and they're committed, and that is, to me, that is what being a global citizen really is. It is somebody who sees where they are, sees how they can impact the people around them, and just goes all in. And being a global citizen doesn't mean that you're looking into the other parts of the country, the other parts of the world. It is being present where you are, and speaking into the lives of the people who are around you and enriching them in the ways that you can. That's personally what I think being a global citizen is.
Beautifully said. I love how you addressed everything in those questions. Like about like the leadership, like why is it called Kosovo Leadership Academy? Why is it so important for the country, right? And it's kind of this very early stage, right, where yeah, I did actually know that it was like the youngest, or like the most recent country in Europe, and yeah, and like all of that is to say that you are like pioneers. I mean, that in my head, I translate that as like pioneering spirit, right? Creating something brand new, right? From kind of nothing, right? I mean, you have to create the model, and you have to go forward, and yeah, and then I as you were talking about this, the newness of Kosovo, and like wanting to like foster this next generation of leaders who want to stay in Kosovo, and then also how you talked about just the community that you have at your school with your teachers. the through line that came to my mind is appreciation. It's just so evident that you have a deep sense of appreciation for the people, culture, right, the history of Kosovo, and then that extends also to the, the school, right, and like the teachers that you're supporting, and that you really believe that you're laying like this foundation for a great new future for this country. And I think that's just, again, very noble, and allows you to kind of anchor yourself in your purpose and values, so that, with every word that you say and then every action that you do for another student or a teacher or community member, whoever, it's backed by that same sense of like appreciation that I think people really feel that, they take to it. And I'm thinking about myself. I was born and raised in Southern California area. Very nice, right? And yet I don't think I appreciated it when I was growing up. And then I found myself living abroad for almost 7 years, 4 years. You can tack on 4 more years if you include my undergrad experience, kind of going off and like living in the dorms. But um, I think when I like found myself like living abroad, there was so much that I was able to like expand, like in terms of my perspective and my abilities. And then, I found myself circling back, and now I'm, I'm back in my hometown, with this sense that like, I really believe that I can contribute. And I think, maybe in a similar way, right? The students that you have, you're educating them, they're getting skills like, language abilities, like being able to communicate with people in English and just multiple languages is like such a superpower, um, that maybe there will be a time where they're studying abroad and they're going off and like working, but then to have that sense of appreciation for like Kosovo's, that's where my roots are. That's where I want to like really allow my like full array of like skills to just kind of like flourish. You want to go there and just, start a business, or you want to go and take up political office, or whatever it is, start a school, right? It all sounds very, very meaningful, and it ties back to the mission um, of your school, right? The mission, wait, is learn, live, and lead and love with excellence, right?
Yes.
I love that you guys made it into a chant.
Yeah.
Um, learn it, live it. It sounds kind of like that T-shirt that we made in
Yep.
like
That's
for
actually
Friday.
I had suggested that in one of our classes. I was like, we could always do learn it. This is what we do in high school. And then it became love it, list it. So
You were close though. Yeah, inside joke, right? But yeah, it's powerful, right? Words are powerful. And then the last piece about your sense of like being a global citizen is kind of ultimately about like recognizing your own impact and just going all in. I think that having that anchoring and like being present, and then I love the way you said like speaking into the lives of people around you. I feel like that's just so poetic. It's like that kind of like manifesting, that like this is what it's going to be. I think is really, really powerful. And yeah, and so you're at this moment, right, where the Kosovo Leadership Academy is soon to have its 10-year anniversary. Congratulations. What's the conversation moving forward? What does the next decade look like? I'm curious. Can you kind of let us know what's been kind of like rallying everyone to kind of continue in advancing the mission?
well, that is a really good question. I'd like to know the answer to that as well. um, we, I think, we have moved so quickly. Um, and I mean, okay, 10 years sounds like a long time, but it really isn't. And I'm looking forward to really just kind of creating that stability in terms of the teachers that we have, really training them. And I would love to see a broader teacher training, um, for Kosovo Leadership Academy to be a teacher training base, pretty much. And because we don't like, we don't want just to be the best school in town. Um, we want the public school systems to improve. And so I would love to see. I had a senior. They have to do a capstone at the very end of their senior year, and one of the girls asked me to be her mentor, and it was her idea to have a public school partner with KLA. We call, or for short, Kosovo Leadership Academy is KLA, to partner with KLA. And so we were able to put together a professional development kind of seminar for the teachers from the public school. And so I spoke there, and then one of our elementary teachers spoke, and then one of our middle school teachers spoke. But it was really neat to see them coming in and learning just sometimes, things that we think is like simple and basic things, like it's completely new to them. And they were able to take some of the things that they learned and implement them into their school. And so just knowing that we had that impact, was really, really cool. But eventually we would love to have the KLA be a kind of like a lighthouse school for the schools around it, for the schools in Mitrovica and in the surrounding cities. I think that for me would be the biggest dream.
Yeah, and I have no doubt that you will achieve that, because like to garner that kind of like respect, it takes time. But you've, already proven that dedication over a decade, right? And I think that also is kind of like the mentality of like, if it's not KLA, then who's going to do that? Who's going to take responsibility? And that takes a lot of courage as well on your part to have that as like the driving force, and then to also consider the wider ecosystem, right? Where it's not enough to just have one standout school, just absolutely crushing it. Like, yeah, we're doing so great. Look at us. But finding ways to raise that tide, right, for everyone to benefit, and to have that like partnership too, right? Not being a stranger, not being that kind of like ivory tower, right, from up on high. You can look below and be like, ooh, that's a little bit too messy. I'm okay. I'm gonna stay up here. So I think it's great that you are all leaning into that, and yeah, and with the soon, like we're going to be graduating from Harvard, and so I'm sure you will appreciate having more time back so that you can really focus your energy on this next decade of work, right, with KLA, with all the work that right is going to kind of, I would imagine the impact that you're making at KLA will only increase. And yeah, and it's very clear that through the middle school, I mean not middle school, through the elementary school, the work that you're doing as a principal, with the teacher training, with the connections to the public schools, you're probably going to find yourself even more busy, which is fine. And yeah, it's an exciting moment to kind of like reflect and just kind of redetermine like where you're going to set out from here. So I wanted to ask one more question. And this is kind of one of the last questions that I like to ask my guests. And so it's a book or a movie recommendation. So anything you'd like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, so it's a little bit random, but this is actually, I just have a very brief backstory to this. I've read this book previously, but one of the teachers that she was one of my first hires last year. She was our fourth grade teacher, and she left our school at the end of the year. I was so, so, so sad that she left, but she went into politics, and she was a candidate for the parliament here. And she was recently elected, and so she is a parliament member, and I'm very proud of her. And so she wanted to I wanted to stay connected with her, and we came up with this idea of doing a book club. And so she had at one point asked me um, if I had any advice in terms of like her going into politics, and I'm like, I don't know anything about politics, But I had previously read this book, and I feel like there's so many good lessons on leadership and just in general. But this book is called Team of Rivals, and it's The Political Genius of Abraham Lincoln by Doris Goodwin. It just kind of goes through the life of not just Lincoln, but also the other persons in people in politics during his time, and how he brought together a group of men who were who were not in support of him necessarily, who thought differently than he did, and how he valued the diverse thinking and the diverse minds of these men, and he highly respected each of them for their individual perspective, and he was willing and open to have that, brought into his space. And you know I think that's one of the things that definitely made him a wonderful leader, and I think that's something that we can all learn as leaders, as global citizens, to make sure that we are not being narrow minded in terms of just only hearing people who we think would agree with us, but opening up ourselves, being vulnerable, to listening to other points of view.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lydia, for sharing that book recommendation. And yeah, it just ties in really well with this conversation about global citizenship. What does it mean to be a leader? And then I think also it definitely touches on the um, inevitable like tension that comes with making any kind of change, and that you really have to understand the people that are around you, both allies and rivals, and put that kind of like like, and establish that kind of trust, I think, really. And so I think it's a great recommendation, so thank you so much. And we are coming to the very end of this conversation. It's just been such a joy to learn about your educator journey. It's just it's amazing um, how like from a very very early age, it seems like you've just been set on this path to get to Kosovo, and then to really contribute to the development of this young nation. And that, I have no doubt you are an honorary, what is it, Kosovoan?
Kosovar.
Kosovar. Okay, you are an honorary Kosovar. And
I do have dual citizenship, so I am official as well. I just don't have the
great.
blood.
Great. Yeah. No, no. I think of myself as an honorary Brazilian, and so although I don't have citizenship, I have like just the time spent there, and the memories, but and the friends too. I think that's also another part of it, that maybe we can like kind of end on, is that throughout these journeys that we've both had of seeking to make impact in like kind of where our feet are planted, it requires so many people, right? Both for family, but also fellow teachers, and yeah, the community at large. And so, really creating that kind of culture, where you can appreciate one another, and through that, trust one another, and hopefully call each other friends. You can make it that much more attractive for people to really believe in the mission and see the hope and commit to wanting to stay. And so, you play a very important role in that, Lydia. And yeah, and I just wanted to give the last few words to you. Any like final thoughts about the conversation that we've been having, or thoughts about what's to come? Just anything you'd like to share as we kind of wrap up our conversation.
Yeah, I think dreams take a lot of people to realize, and I have been blessed to be around incredible people in my whole life. I think I know I would not be where I am today if it was not for my mom, but also my husband. He has been he has been just an incredible support, in anything that I wanted to do. He has been there, when I was doubting, Harvard and whether, I should or shouldn't, like he was never in doubt a single moment. And with, personally, professionally, and with the school, he has brought it such a long way. And I just, I just am very grateful for, like you said, the support network that I've had. Um, it's been a huge team effort, and it has not been without its bumps in the road. It's really nice to sit here and to just talk briefly about all of the cool things about it. But working on something that has such a huge impact and a huge vision also comes with a huge amount of challenges as well. And I just want to encourage people who are pursuing their dreams and trying to change cultures or change systems or whatever it may be, that you are not alone when you face those challenges, and finding the people who are going to be by your side and walking through it with you is essential. And so make sure that you find your team, make sure that you find your people, and just know that you're not alone.